Welcome to Opera Holland Park on Saturday, July the 17th, between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. We'll be bringing you the first ever Word in Your Park from this very pleasant, airy, covered but socially distanced auditorium.
No, Word in Your Park is going to be a weatherproof event. We're under canvas, but we have taken the precaution of booking 2 hours of blistering sunshine just in case, and it's going to be us and some old pals of ours involved in 2 hours of rock and roll storytelling, involving Gary Crowley, Leslie Ann Jones, Barney Hoskins, and others to be announced. There'll be mood-altering drinks available, and who knows, crisps.
It's been a long, cold, lonely winter, so it'll be good to see you here. Get your tickets at the link below. See you there.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a view.
Well, it's another Word in Your Attic, and look who we have. The comedy writer, novelist, and dependably gleaming beacon of entertainment on all those magazines that we used to run. It's the great David Quantick.
Hello,
Lovely
everybody.
to see you, David.
How nice to be here and yet again be employed by Mark Ellen and David Hepworth.
Employment, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it qualifies for that.
Was there a discussion about a fee? I don't remember that.
This takes me back. Only joking. You were never. Yeah, I never worked for you at IPC, so it's a different conversation.
Yeah. And where are you? It's Hastings, isn't it? Because I follow you on Twitter, and you used to you've sadly stopped doing it now, obviously, because you're not travelling as much. But you used to tweet hilariously about how terrible Southern Rail was.
Yes, it was. Well, gosh, I'd kill to go on a Southern.
I know. Now you'd stand in cramped conditions.
It would be like being in a gondola or in the cabin of an airship or something exotic like that. Yeah, just to sit in one of those terrible chairs that smells of waste and be really uncomfortable. But now it seems a distant paradise. But yeah, I loathe them. I can't wait to get back on their trains.
Right.
Very good. And how have you been occupying your time during this?
I've been writing and walking the dog. Really, it hasn't really changed my life to any appreciable degree. It has to be said.
You just got a fitter dog, I suppose.
Yeah, the dog. Well, the dog is he's the kind of dog who gets fit by throwing himself at glass windows. So he's quite fit.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
What does that indicate? A lack of intelligence or just a sense of adventure?
My dog's called Jim. He's a Labradoodle, and I've always said that he's like the man or woman who goes to Glastonbury and takes all their drugs on the first night.
And then throws themselves into a plate glass window.
Themselves into a plate glass window and spends the whole weekend talking about how they're going to see Damon Marley, and then passes out just before Damon Marley comes on.
Very good. You obviously speak with experience.
Yes.
How many Glastonburys have you done over the years, David? You must have done loads.
Oh, I think I must have done about 5. I went in the 80s. I can remember seeing the Proclaimers playing a small stage. Me and my friend Kath Carroll, there was a huge thunderstorm when the Cure were headlining, and we realized that the Cure wouldn't be using their bus. So we went to the bus, and we said to the woman from the catering company, "Can we come in?" And she said, "Do you want their dinner? They didn't eat any of it."
That's a dream, isn't it?
Oh, those were the days. So yeah, we ate the Cure's dinner while they were playing. And I really hope Robert Smith didn't come back and say, "Who's been eating mine?" Horrid.
Fantastic.
But yeah, and I went all the way up until about 2008, when I was on my way in Wellington's on a hot day to walk to see, I think, Damon Marley, maybe, or one of them are. And halfway through, I just thought, I can't be bothered with this. I'm walking in heavy boots in the sun to go and see someone I don't even know which Marley it is. So I went back and sat in the trailer and read a book and thought, why am I here? Okay. So that was it for me for Glastonbury.
And that's it. It lost its magic, clearly.
It just went, yeah. But yes, I mean, I'm one of the people, I remember sort of commando Glastonburys, black hash Glastonburys, the scary ones before the Travellers weren't allowed. I actually got banned by Michael Eavis once. Do you remember Select used to have an on-site edition?
I do. I remember it very well. Select Daily.
Select Daily, and I had a column in it, and I was quite grumpy. And I wrote a thing about, I think I used the words "ma wanker," because I had a thing about kids at festivals. And then Glastonbury wasn't family friendly. It was like feet deep in mud and water were still some dubious people. I remember writing something like, "Oi, Ma Wanker, what do you think you're doing bringing your kids in?" And Michael Eavis had a word with the editor and my column was dropped.
No.
Yeah, I was banned from writing about Glastonbury at Glastonbury.
That is sensational.
Golden days. That's the power.
I
of the
know. I
press.
didn't realise he had that much control over it, or even read it actually. So it's quite flattering in some ways.
I like the
How
idea.
amazing.
Yeah, it's
I remember Michael Hogan. You remember Michael Hogan, the who directs the Telegraph? Very, very funny writer, writing this really funny thing. He had a new idea for Glastonbury, which was called the Mumfield, and it was for people who'd had a basically just taken too many drugs, you know. And there was all over this field. There was just a sofa with a duvet on it, and a washing machine, and a television set with a big screen playing Finding Nemo. And if you'd had a bad night, you go along this, and this kindly mum would cook you a fried breakfast. You could sleep under this duvet watching Finding Nemo while she cleaned all your clothes for you and got your boots sorted out. That's a lovely idea, the mum field. Because at times like that, you'd feel a bit homesick, wouldn't you?
It's a great idea, and for some of both the younger element and the much older element,
Absolutely.
I would have benefited from it on several occasions.
Everybody was mum.
They do.
So
look, we should take you back to where you. I think you grew up. It was in Plymouth, I think, wasn't it? Was it Plymouth?
I was a child in Plymouth, and then we moved to proper Devon because Plymouth, of course, was an independent borough county, and then we moved to Exmouth in Devon, and that was where I had my musical awakening, as it were.
And can you remember the record playing equipment at your home and what it might have been playing?
I can remember too. Right. Our next door neighbours were Pam and Tony. Tony was a sailor on the Ark Royal. They got rid of their dansette. It was, I believe, a red dansette with a gold grille. And they gave us their record collection. It was Best of the Goon Shows Volume 1, Best of the Goon Shows Volume 2, 3, I think, Val Doonican albums. The singles collection included 7 Little Girls Kissing and Hugging with Fred and Itsy Witsy Teensy Weensy Yellow Polka Dot.
yes,
great records.
Good.
All great records.
I was not raised on rock. This is really important.
Nobody was. That's the great truth, isn't it?
There's, the imaginary elder brother who listened to the Stones and all the young dudes didn't exist. So I grew up with no rock. Goons, I mean, listening to that when I was about 10, there goes Jim, was a massive game changer for me. And I didn't listen to rock music for years and years and years.
So it's just comedy records.
Who was your favourite goon?
My favourite goon is still Spike. But yeah, it was just comedy records. I mean, I quite like the Wurzels. I loved the Goodies. The Goodies were,
Yeah.
Python to me was just like, it's just posh goons. I like Monty Python, but it's like, I don't know, hearing the Jags after Elvis Costello for me. But yeah, my favorite goon was Spike Milligan. I still love all that stuff. Just that, I mean, I know it was radio, but just that bizarre combination that you've got the world's most surreal writer, you've got the best impressionist and weird actor in the world, and a fantastic light entertainer.
Yeah.
Having Hogan, James Corden, and Chris Morris in a show.
Yeah.
I think it's the fantastic light entertainer who often gets forgotten, doesn't he? Because he provided the warmth, didn't he?
Yeah.
Seacombe, which is really important.
He gave it not quite a heart, because it's quite a callous show, but he gave it, he laughed all the time. That helps for people who like
helps enormously. People who laugh naturally on the radio are golden, I think.
It's Billy Connolly's great thing.
Yeah.
Billy Connolly laughs at his own jokes, and normally that makes you want to punch people.
But no, it works.
But Billy Connolly, you're like, why is he laughing? This must be good. You can see his brain going, I've thought of something really funny.
I always think Barry Cryer is wonderful on radio panel shows because he laughs at other people's jokes.
Barry Cryer is fantastic, I think.
He
tweeted a joke this morning about, it was so good. He says it's Norwegian joke. He says, I don't do Irish jokes. It's a Norwegian joke. He says two Norwegians talking. One says the other one. Says the Tour de France. I don't get that. I mean, why do those people do it? Up and down those hills and those mountains, knackering themselves. And his mate says, well, the one who wins gets £250,000. He said, well, what about all the others? Why do they do it? It's good, isn't it?
I think. Right.
Yeah.
I've got a since we're on visuals, I can do this for once.
Go on.
Jesus Christ is standing in front of Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate says, "The people have spoken. You are to be executed for claiming to be the Son of God and a revolution." Jesus says, "It is my destiny. I accept it." Pontius Pilate goes, "You can choose the manner of your execution." Jesus says, "I beg your pardon." Pontius Pilate says, "You can choose the manner of your death. You could be crucified, or you can be stung to death by a swarm of bees." Jesus thinks about it and he says, "I feel that the latter death would not be suitable. I will take the death by crucifixion." And to this day, that is why we do this instead of Barry Cryer. I mean, I assume he must be like Bowie and have turned down knighthoods and awards because he should be in the House of Lords. He should be in the royal family.
He should. He should.
I mean, you should get him on. It doesn't, he had a hit in Scandinavia with Purple People Eater.
He did. You're right. He had a hit.
He did.
Yeah. No, he raises the sum of human happiness.
Absolutely.
Amazing guy. Incredible.
Right. So when did you start getting interested in music then? When did you move on from pure comedy diet to a musical diet?
Well, it was the 70s. So albums filtered through. So I had, here's one.
Right. Is that the Red album?
The Red album. This is the original cassette.
Right.
I also had the Blue album on cassette, which is gone. I had, because it was the Lord, Dark Side of the Moon, which I think was actually sent to people.
Yeah.
To school milk.
Yes.
It actually said, you can't have milk, but you can have Dark Side of the Moon. So I woke up, there was a copy at the end of the bed. And I had the Goons, and I had Tubular Bells. And I love Tubular Bells. I must have heard it as the theme to Arena or whatever it was. And it's like, oh, there's more Mike Oldfield records. So being canny, I went to Smith's and I discovered that you could get all of them in a box.
Oh, right.
Oh, Lord,
of course. Yes.
Mike Oldfield boxed it's one of those great accidental discoveries, because you get what you paid for, which is Tubular Bells, and you get the slight sadness of discovering that Hergest Ridge isn't as good. And then you get used to it. But you also get the extra disc, which is insane, of Mike Oldfield's collaborations with David Bedford. You get space rock, you get avant classical, you get him and David Bedford singing Victorian parlor ballads, very out of tune. You get Portsmouth. It's a brilliant record. It expanded. And of course, you get Viv Stanshall doing the Sailor's Hornpipe.
Oh,
which
brilliant.
Is one of the greatest moments in human history. So, yeah, Mike Oldfield box is a very important. This isn't my original, but I managed to get an equally scabby looking original, complete with booklet.
So Tubular Bells. So what was Hergest Ridge the follow-up?
Yeah,
it was, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was
which was a disappointment. Which I mean, relatively, it had to be, didn't it? How could it not be a disappointment?
It had no chance. I mean, it's a great record, but it's always going to be. It's like when Mike Oldfield does tours, he doesn't, or he's short of money. He doesn't do Hergest Ridge 2.
No, absolutely.
There is an orchestral Hergest Ridge you can find on YouTube, which he didn't like, but it's worth listening to. I can't believe I've just said the words. There is an orchestral Hergest Ridge, and it's worth.
I'm just processing that exactly.
It's like punk never happened.
Were you about to mention the Portsmouth Symphonia? Did Mike Oldfield ever have any involvement with them?
I don't think he did. I was.
Oh, right. Okay.
Portsmouth, the single he had, because he had a lot of jolly singles.
Oh, right. I see.
Yeah.
I see. Of course.
But no, I don't think he quite. I mean, he was friends with people like Lowell Coxhill.
Yeah.
So there's that, but he never, and of course he was in Kevin Ayre's band, but he never went the full Canterbury.
No.
I know they're not quite Canterbury, but there's
Portsmouth Symphony was all members of Soft Machine playing instruments they couldn't play, wasn't it? It was Brian Eno, wasn't it? The whole idea was you had to play an instrument you were incapable of playing.
I was trying to remember. Yeah.
Kind of art concept.
Yeah.
It was all the bits that John Peel would play when he just played something by Ivor Cutler about a sparrow.
Yeah. Who was the first band you went to see?
I've got all right. First band I went to see. This is the lineup. Headlining Alberto y los Trios Paranoias.
Oh,
God.
Tom Hibbert's brother.
John Dowie.
John Dowie, yes.
No, it's Jim Callahan. And supporting at the bottom of the bill, the Police.
Wow.
Bottom of the bill.
Fantastic. I love the Albertos. Again, comedy and rock. They were great. The Police, who I was familiar with because of Annie Nightingale's show, were really going for it at this point. They had the boiler suits. They were fantastic. I mean, I had nothing to compare them to, but they were as good as the records and louder.
Yeah, they were a sort of punk act then, weren't they?
They were. They'd done.
That's how they presented themselves.
Yeah, and obviously they weren't quite that because they had the reggae bits, but they had a lot of energy. They had the short hair, not quite mullets. And there's a follow-up to this, that I was on a radio show with Sting, as you do, and I went to the pub and I was sat opposite him, and I said, the Police were the first band I ever saw, Exeter Roots Club. And Sting, instead of, doing what you expect, which is, or thank you, he said, yeah, after that gig, and I quote you, I went into the dressing room and there was Bruce Mitchell. Bruce Mitchell, as you probably know, is a Manchester music legend. He drummed with the Albertos and he drummed with the Ritty Column. He's quite an eccentric man. And Bruce Mitchell looked at Sting, dripping with sweat. Sting had just played his life out because every night they were treating this like we have to break the band. Bruce Mitchell looked at him and said, so that's your game, is it? And Sting told me this story. And later on,
meaning what? That's the music you're going to play and you'll never make it, or your whole ploy is to try really hard.
Yeah, you're trying too hard.
Trying too hard.
You're not cool. Later on, of course, I met Bruce Mitchell. I told him the story again, and he said, "Fucking Sting." So that was fun.
But Sting remembered the gig. So how many years later was this?
This would have been in about 2000.
Oh, right. So it's a long time.
Yeah.
30 years later. And it obviously impressed. And I've never had a problem with Sting particularly, but I just thought self-deprecating humor always wins me over.
Yeah.
Completely.
That's brilliant.
Also, how many Bruce Mitchell anecdotes do you hear?
No, that's true.
No.
I'm trying to work out how
this will get back to him.
I hope so.
I'm trying to work out how the bill worked. If the Police were first on the bill, they were first
on the bill. They did their set. Then John Dowie came on and did his spoken word. Then the Albertos, and I remember the encore because they did "Fuck You," which was their punk Boomtown Rats parody song. It even started ga 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 ga, and all the artists came on, and Sting was playing a placard. They'd had a big Ramone-style placard that said "Fuck You," and Sting was pretending to play it.
Really?
So it was like a stiff package. I think the stiff package tour was partly in their mind.
Yeah. John
You've
Dowie.
got to admire him for joining in.
John Dowie, didn't he make a single for Stiff? Didn't he make a single called I Hate the Dutch?
I hate the Dutch. I hate their fucking clogs. I hate their something. I hate their little dogs. And Jim Callahan. Is it Batman? Is it Superman? No, it's Jim Callahan. Tell you got your money's worth that night.
You did. That's amazing. So, is that where you went to Exeter Roots Club? Was that the big venue?
There was that in the university, and by this point I'd met some people in the sixth form who, like me, were a bit not like the others, and they were into punk. So I got into punk and became a Buzzcocks fan and listened to John Peel. And we saw the Members, we saw the Jam, some other bands as well. We didn't see a lot because Exeter was 11 miles away from Exmouth and there were no trains, and we had to wait until Graham Birch was old enough to drive.
Right.
And that's why I missed punk.
The Members made some good records. Rat Up a Drain Pipe. You can't knock it.
Solitary Confinement.
Yeah.
Sound of the Suburbs, the archetypal provincial punk single.
Yeah.
Uptown Top. What was it called? No, hang on a second.
Offshore
banking business.
That's right. Brilliant.
Nicky Tesco.
Fantastic.
Extraordinary. So, right.
What were the first singles you bought then? Can you remember? Because you've had the albums, but do you remember the first singles?
I used to tell people the first single I bought was Airport by the Motors, which gives you an indication of how uncool, but that's the one I used to lie about. The first single I ever bought.
You said that to make yourself look good.
Yeah. And all respect, Airport by the Motors is a very underrated record. But the actual single I bought, the first single I bought was Mull of Kintyre.
Wow.
I no longer have it, but I still love it. It was a great, great song. And it's one of those moments when you sort of think, it's Paul from the Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Mull of Kintyre, unashamed. And everyone goes, oh, the B-side's classic, Girls' School. Yes, it is, but it's not as good as Mull of Kintyre.
So was Red and Blue, that was your way into the Beatles then, was it?
Absolutely.
Because that's an interesting record. It's got things like In My Life and Nowhere Man and Hey, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, and kind of not obvious stuff. So it's quite an interesting place to start.
Yeah, I think it was brought in as a response to a bootleg, which had a similar track listing.
Yeah.
But of course, the great thing, what things interest me is that when Q started banging on about Revolver in the 90s, when Anthology came out, you know, it's like you had to have OK Computer and Revolver. The reason Revolver was the neglected album was because when Alan Klein compiled the Red Album, he put on Yellow Submarine and Eleanor Rigby, and he left out everything else. So loads of people came to Revolver who'd never heard it.
Right.
Yeah. Which is not, you know, they'd never heard any of it apart from the single. So people had never heard Tomorrow Never Knows or And Your Bird Can Sing or Good Day Sunshine or Taxman, which now, you know, it replaced Pepper. You know, I remember when I was a kid, you know, all these books, Paul Gambaccini, Sgt. Pepper is the greatest album of all time.
Yeah.
I feel I've gone down a diversion there, but there we go.
No. Yeah, I've seen you doing your fantastic quizzes, and your knowledge of the Beatles is absolutely astonishing. Is there a particular Beatles interesting pop fact that you always thought was particularly stunning?
God, there are. I can never remember that. My favourite thing is what does the Beatles chauffeur play on Revolver?
Ooh,
chauffeur.
Good. It's going to be a harmonica, or it's going to be a.
There's a guy called Alf.
Is it the guy who wrote the book?
There's a guy called Alf Weaver who used to drive
Alf
them.
Bicknell.
Alf Bicknell. It was Alf Bicknell. He wrote a book about it, didn't he?
Did he?
I think so. Didn't he write
that one?
Kiss and Tell?
That's why you'll never run out of stories about the Beatles.
I know.
Their chauffeur wrote a book. That's fantastic.
Oh, please tell me it was called Drive My Car.
So what did he play?
What instrument did he play?
He plays Chains in a bathtub on Yellow Submarine.
Oh, of course.
I shall think of that every time I hear it now. I shall think
My
of it
most bizarre
differently.
fact, very quickly, I went to university with Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais had a synth band called Shona Dancing.
Oh,
Shona Dancing were named after a girl in our year called Shona Myerscough. I knew Shona, and she once told me that her uncle played cello on the White Album, and I looked it up, Henry Myerscough. So there is a direct link between Ricky Gervais and the Beatles. There you go. You can have that for free.
Absolutely brilliant. So, you never performed in a band? Never.
No. I was in a bedroom band with Graham Birch and Ewan. We sent a tape. We were called Furious Baton Charge. We sent a tape to John Peel, who, according to Graham, returned it with a note saying, "You are the worst band I have ever heard."
This has gone too far.
Yeah. Peel sent that note.
I know, it must have been from the heart. I mean, you think all the people he could have said.
Absolutely. That seems absolutely. It's so unlike him. Actually, why would he ever do? Why would you do that? You would just not write back, or he liked you.
Yeah, I mean, we'd done a concept album called Tales of the Wise Old Frog, which was basically a rip-off of Sir Henry at Rawlinson End, but about a frog.
Yeah.
And we couldn't play I mean, it was a cliche, but we literally couldn't play our instruments. So it was unbearable to listen to. I'm still waiting for somebody to come up with a cassette, because we tried to sell it. We did sell some, but no one's ever made the connection between me and it.
Right. So how did you start? How did you start writing?
I bought an NME. There was a review by Matt Snow of the latest Bob Seger album, and I became incensed and wrote to Neil Spencer a huge long letter which contained the words "Bob Seger is not enough" in capital letters. And Neil basically wrote back and said, "If you think you can do better, come and see me." I haven't done better, and now I'm a huge Bob Seger fan.
I'm going to say, what was the Bob Seger album that this began with? I'm trying to imagine this.
Well, it must have been in 1983 or two. So, you know, even his Silver Bullet years were behind him.
Right.
But I love Bob Seger now, and particularly, to be cool, you know, the early garage stuff, which he won't allow to be released, is fantastic.
I thought he'd slowly come around, hadn't he, Bob Seger? Because for years he wouldn't let his stuff be distributed digitally, but I thought he changed his
Oh, right.
mind.
Well, I must check this. Oh, thanks for the heads up, because yeah, there's bits here and there, but yeah, he was so badly treated. You know, I think there's a Bob Seger System album he's not allowed to write songs on, and doesn't sing all the tracks. That must have hurt.
I like.
Who
Bob
was at
Seger.
the Enemy then when you joined? This is the era of what was it? Was Andrew Collins there and Stuart McConey? And
It's kind of, with all due respect
Danny
to the
Kelly?
writers, it's one of those in between years.
yeah,
You know, when I went in to see Neil, I love an anecdote. It was Danny Baker's leaving party. It
Oh,
couldn't have
God.
been more end of an era. And I remember Danny was sitting on a desk talking to Andy Gill and probably Monty Smith, and drinking and telling jokes. And I'm like, I've missed the bus, haven't I?
completely. Yeah.
I've missed, and brilliant writers, Barney Hoskins, Don Watson, I've forgotten the rest of the writers. Adrian Thrills was there.
Yeah.
Paul Denoyer. I mean, brilliant people, but it was a musical lull. We'd had punk and two-tone and everything. New pop, as they called it, was coming round the corner, which the Enemy wasn't good at. So it was kind of, well, we've got the Pogues and REM, and the Smiths are just, it was a bit, and Billy Bragg, it was a bit of an Andy Kershaw kind of 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I sort of trod water. And then we got baggy, and then the Enemy woke up again, and, you know, all sorts. But what I used to do was I used to sit in Carnaby Street and look out the window longingly at Smash Hits, which was opposite.
Directly opposite.
And I wanted to be there, so I'd sit there typing, you know, the blubbery hellbellies have released and I'd just be thinking, why aren't I doing Spandau Ballet across the road? I should be doing that.
Well, I have to say, we used to look down from that Smash Hits window in Carnaby Street into the Enemy and feel very grateful, Dave, that we were there, didn't we? I mean, my God.
It's kind of it's interesting how parallel Paul Denoy's his theory has always been that there was a time, you know, late 70s, early 80s, when Smash Hits and the Enemy largely did the same bands, you know,
Yeah.
the Jam and so forth, the Specials, I don't know who, Blondie.
Yeah,
and then sort of the Enemy, his theory was that the Enemy kind of decided we can't win on this basis. Therefore, we're going to have to find our own little niche over here, which is probably like you're saying, it's the Pogues and REM.
It was Billy Bragg and the Redskins and all that. It was political.
It was
all
things
that
that aren't quite so much fun.
They just thought we can't do Spandau Ballet. We haven't, our heart's not in it really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, because the Enemy had I used to go back and read the bound volumes, and the Enemy had a great history of I mean, guitar-based pop. I always say the Enemy does well when young white men with guitars are popular.
Absolutely.
And they have no control over the world. And when it's not young, so Spandau Ballet fit at the start.
Yeah.
You know, the early stuff. But yes, it was rather sad. And
yeah, Britpop, the Strokes, all those guys, it all kind of just took off.
It all
again,
worked,
didn't it?
Baggy.
Yeah.
So the Enemy in the 80s, it had always had a broad church. You know, I love the fact that I could go and interview P.D. James or Robert Zemeckis, and Don would go and do J.G. Ballard. But Julie Burchill, who was good at this sort of thing, said in the 80s, the Enemy had acquired a kind of, and I quote, quiet in the library feel. And it had become a bit po-faced.
Yeah.
You know, Danny Baker going was, you know, Danny and Julie Burchill going, the humour had gone. Ian Penman, you know, he's a very funny writer, but he's not funny in that way. So the Enemy is a great quote, I keep quoting. The 40th anniversary of NME, someone asked Bob Mortimer, what do you think of the NME? And he said, I think there should be more in it for little lads. And to be honest, when the NME is a fun play, when you go there because it's your mate and your mates read it and it's kind of a little gang thing, you know, it doesn't matter what they write about. But when the NME becomes a bit kind of, I don't know, I want to say snooty, but it wasn't much fun in the mid-80s.
Well, it lost its confidence completely, didn't it? And also, I think that was the effect of being in the office, that nobody dared say, let's write about this. And I can remember that a bit when I was there in the late 80s. You'd say, let's write about Reckless Eric, or let's write about the B-52s, or whatever it was, you know, and it didn't quite fit with the, Scritti Politti Crispy Ambulance, or whatever the whole Mancunian vibe was. You know, there was just something that was considered to be on message, and some things that were considered to be not right, really. It didn't fit.
It was an odd place. And yeah, I know that certain people struggled with it. I remember reviewing a Fetus record, and Neil Spencer saying, not entirely disapprovingly, but not entirely approvingly, "Oh, you've got fetus on your singles page." It was that kind of thing. And then later we had the hip hop wars, and then there was this tension of like, we should be writing about American black music. No, we should be writing about people in Glasgow who can't sing and play the guitar out of tune. I hated indie. I hated C86.
Did you really?
Did you?
Oh,
That was the
absolutely.
absolute heart of the enemy, though, wasn't it?
Well, now it's insane because now it's like Americans going, there's a new C86 band playing. And like, oh God, I thought, I should have killed them at the time. Could have stamped it out. But it was that bizarre thing of people going, yeah, Public Enemy are okay, but the Suit Dragons, now you're talking.
So they send you off to interview all sorts of people, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to become Mr. Pop because I liked pop. I was obsessed with it. And I literally remember a staff member who will remain nameless saying to me, "You don't really like the Pet Shop Boys, do you, David?"
Oh, God.
Quite genuinely, but in a suggesting that I was adopting this as a pose to somehow make people look at me. And I spent years it's insane, trying to get the Pet Shop Boys in, whereas now the Pet Shop Boys are obviously, one of the acts that rock papers love, like the Manic Street Preachers or back in the day, the Smiths.
Yeah.
But then it was that kind of rock thing. The Pet Shop Boys are insincere. They wrote a song about wanting to be rich. They're ironic and all that kind of thing. It was sickening. So I went off and then I met Stephen Wells, and then all bets were off because basically I was working with a tank. It was like, I want to interview Betty Boo. Fucking hell, shit, bollocks, dogs, cocks, wank. Betty Boo is great. You're like, okay, there's a feature. So yeah, and then
so you must have felt happier because you made the move to Select, didn't you? With again with Andrew Collins and Stuart and all those people and Steve Lamacq. I mean, that must have been a better place to be for a while.
I just wrote the column there, and I wrote for Q at the same time because there was a bizarre thing that instead of Dark Side of the Moon, when you turn 30, you got a letter from EMAP going, "Welcome to Q." But I don't.
Saga of its time.
There'd be a big EMAP van. EMAP was the publisher of Q, listeners. But there'd be a big EMAP van outside. There'd be Andrew Collins and Danny Kelly sitting there going, "Come on, we have to go now. Here's your Dire Straits. Here's your Dire Straits CD. Here's Eric Clapton. Come on now. It'll be fine." It was
won't hurt a bit. Yeah.
It'll hurt. And then it was like Mojo is like the home. You remember Biff, the City Limits cartoonist, used to do like collage-y cartoons. Biff had a great cartoon. This is in the mid-80s. It was so prophetic. So the early 80s. It was an old people's home. And it was a nurse saying to an old man, "Come on, Jeff, it's time for your Van Morrison."
Oh, yeah.
And that was amazing because in the early 80s, the notion that old people would be listening to, the word heritage meant castles. It didn't mean Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
That's true. Oh, that's so
there was still the idea that you'd stop listening to rock music and you'd suddenly listen to Mendelssohn's E minor violin concerto or something. The thing that your parents kind of thought might happen to you in the 60s,
I was suffocated because when I started writing for the NME, part of me couldn't believe it, but part of me was going, "You're 23, you've got 7 years left. What are you going to do then?"
Right. Yes.
It was, I don't know what, because the old rock, I won't name names because of people I like, but there was a music journalist who'd been on the NME in the 70s, and he came in and he was throwing a massive fit because he'd been given like an old blues album to review, and he was like, "Oh, that's it, is it for me? That's it. No new albums for journalist X, just old blues records from now on." And Q didn't exist then. So there was nowhere for person X to go. You would just do that. You'd go to a specialist publication or get a real job.
Yeah.
So suddenly this massive resource, as we now say, opened up as people going, "Please, sir, I know about the Yardbirds."
So you'd started comedy writing with Stephen Wells too, didn't you?
Yeah.
If I right, was it Spitting Image?
No.
And then on the hour?
Wells came up to me in the office and he was quite rude. And he said something like really praiseworthy, like, you're not completely shit. Let's write something together. So we started writing comedy columns. And then one day we got a letter from Armando Iannucci.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and Armando had read our stuff and was looking for writers for On the Hour. And my most shop-worn anecdote is me and Stephen went to our office at the BBC, and there was Armando Iannucci, Chris Morris, Stuart Lee, Richard Herring, David Schneider, and Steve Coogan. And I looked around the room and thought to myself, this lot are a bunch of losers. I'm the talented one here. Which just goes to show how much alcohol can affect your perception of the real world. Yeah, and then me and Stephen worked for Armando, and I kind of stayed with comedy after that.
Right. So how long ago is that? Sorry, did you say? When what are we talking about?
Very late 80s.
Right.
88 or 89. I've still got the letter from Armando, which one day I'll blackmail him with.
So
I've got very fond memories of your show that you did with Collins and a mechanic called Lloyd Cole Knew My Father.
Oh, that was great.
That was just brilliant. Remind us of that.
Well, that was basically using all our we wrote the funny stuff at NME. Andrew and Stuart edited the thrill section, and I wrote stuff for it, and we had a great time. And what Andrew or Stuart had the idea of doing a show about what it was really like to be in like reviewing gigs that you had missed, because we knew that people would like that, because there's a perception of the NME, you never went to the gig, I bet. And it's like, no, we didn't. There you go. And just little things, editing the letters page, making up letters, types of people who wrote in, the mysterious goth girl who sends an envelope which when you tip it out is full of tiny stars, that sort of thing. The angry Morrissey hater, ironically, why don't you just change your name to the new Morrissey Express? And it was the history of all the interviews we'd done, all the people we'd met, all the lies we'd told. There was an extended section on interviewing Lou Reed, which I very much enjoyed. We did it as an Edinburgh show, and we did it as a radio series, which was lovely because we got to choose musical guests. So we had Roddy Frame and Edwyn Collins and Ian McNabb. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was really good. It's just incredible insight into how obsessive and how eccentric and how mad the readers are. Remember, you would talk about the pictures people sent in, people drawing pictures of Michael Stipe, but with the head of an ocelot or whatever, just really completely bonkers.
There were some interesting people out there, but it was the only outlet for a long time.
Yeah,
it was. It was the internet before the internet.
It was.
It totally was the internet, and you'd bond with people. But because it was music, it was just like Twitter now with anything. That you'd say something like, Roxy Music's new album is not as good as the last one. How dare you say this? You deserve to be crucified. You're just a David Cassidy fan. To Roy Carr, for example. So yeah, it was amazing. And I really loved the fact about the music press that it was a way in for people from less privileged backgrounds. I mean, we weren't exactly, a working class revolution, but we were a lot of comprehensive kids, grammar school boys. There was hardly an Oxbridge person there. There were probably more women than there were in other areas of writing.
Yeah.
I used to say it was Cambridge for losers, and I really believe that. The amount of people who've come out of the music press and gone on to do interesting things in the media, it's nothing to do with nepotism. It's because we were given a massive playground to write what we wanted, so long as we mentioned the drummer.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And
on the comedy front, we must just ask you about Veep. Dave and I are huge enthusiasts, and both slightly in love with Julia Louis-Dreyfus as well.
So yeah, forget the slightly.
Oh, she's great.
How did that happen? Again, that's an Armando thing, wasn't it? I mean, you were part of his writing team.
Yeah, the last series of The Thick of It, when it was a series, Armando brought in a few more writers, and he rehired me. I like to say, like David Bowie brought in Earl Slick in the 1990s. Oh my gosh, to fill out the sound. But he brought in a lot of new and old writers. So, and he just happened to be developing Veep when they were making The Thick of It. So I got kind of put on the cart, as it were, with the rest of the shopping. And yeah, I worked on 3 seasons of Veep. And that was, when your previous experience has been sitting in an office in London, making up jokes for Johnny Vaughan, it was a bit of a shock. And it's like, when I've worked on British shows, I'll turn on the telly and I'll see an advert and there will be someone I've worked with. With Veep, I'd watch a film and there would be someone I'd worked with.
Yeah,
I'd be going,
sure.
oh my God, it's Tony. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus was just, I mean, she's one of the greatest comedy actors or actors in the world.
I think so too, yeah.
Astonishing. She's pretty nice as well. I got a hug off her on the Emmys night. Can I do my egg story?
Yeah,
Go on, carry on.
Right. Veep, filming day for Veep. There's a thing called the craft table, which means breakfast. There was a bowl of eggs. Being British, I thought, oh, hard-boiled egg. I'll keep that for me lunch. Went to the loo, put my hand in my pocket. Wasn't a hard-boiled egg. It was a raw egg for the cooks to cook. I smashed a raw egg in my pocket, ruining my keys, my handkerchief, and my glasses cleaning cloth. This is relevant.
This was at the Emmys.
No, not at the Emmys.
Not the Emmys.
During a day of filming.
Day of filming.
Later on in the day, I've just managed to wash everything out. I've thrown away the handkerchief. I've thrown away the glasses cleaning cloth. I've just about recovered when Julia Louis-Dreyfus comes up to me. She hasn't really spoken to me before, not one-on-one. And she says, seeing my glasses, you wear glasses, don't you? Do you have, and I swear this is true, a glasses cleaning cloth I can borrow? And I could not say to her, no, because I broke a raw egg in my pocket this morning. So I just went, no, and sidled off and got quite an odd look. So that is one of the lessons of life. Never assume that an egg is cooked.
No, right.
You won't be asked to lend your glasses cleaning cloth to the main actor in the show.
Now, how does it work on something like Veep? Because the image we always have of American comedy shows is a writer's room. You know, they have loads of writers who all sit around swapping, zingers.
Eating donuts.
But you're obviously in the UK for a start. I mean, how did your relationship with that show work, practically speaking, when you were doing it?
Well, it was kind of a pyramid. Armando would invent the show, then he'd discuss it with the main writers, who'd be like Tony Hale, Simon Blackwell, Chris Addison. Then they bring everybody in, the British writers in Britain, and say, we're going to do this in the series. In episode 1, this happens to Selena. In episode 3, there's a famine. Episode 5, she becomes blah, blah, blah. Then we'd all go away and write the scripts. Then Armando's brilliant method is passing them round. So we'd rewrite till it was solid. Then they start filming in the States, and Armando would go out with like batches of writers.
So you had joke fixers, didn't you? I mean, isn't that how it works? That you're there actually on set, and if something isn't working, you rewrite a line?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen American shows recorded with an audience, which we didn't have. And that was mad because they do a take, and while they were setting up again, writers would flood up to the stage and do it live. Veep was obviously not with an audience, but yeah, there'd be constant changes. We called them alts. So you'd have a scene, it'd be like, and I wrote the Star Wars thing on the thick of it because of this. There was a scene, Armando had said, in this scene, Malcolm Tucker is persuading Ollie, Chris Addison, to join in his attack on the opposition, on whoever, his superiors, and we need a way to do it. So I'd had this routine in my head about Star Wars and hating Star Wars and describing Star Wars in a way that was very negative. And I thought, what if Malcolm used Ollie as a Star Wars fan? So that kind of thing. So Malcolm does this whole rant against Star Wars and goes, it's like that.
Right.
So, but most of it would be like Ian Martin, the Minister of Swearing, a genius writer. He'd go into the thick of it all, Veep, and just say appalling things. Oh, did I tell you about me and Donald Trump?
Well, go
on.
So I'd written a line with Stephen Wells. I wrote it, calling the phrase spunk-faced shit gibbon, which was used to describe Morrissey and various other people. A few occasions where Wells said, oh, I like that. And years later, I wrote it and I put it into Veep. I think it was changed to something like orange-faced shit gibbon. You can guess where this is going.
Go on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Donald Trump, a few years later, launched an attack on a US senator, as he was wont to do. The senator replied by saying, listen, Donald Trump, you Cheeto-faced shit gibbon. Imagine how I felt. And a linguistics expert got in touch with me and I told him the story. And shitgibbon is officially the name for that verbal construction like wank puffin and cockwomble. A shitgibbon is now a linguistic term.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good work.
You know, I wish Swell's invented sado, by the way. I've always tried to get that into the Oxford Dictionary. We were working on something and we used to call people this and that, and he came up with sado, which is a much more popular phrase.
Right. Is that not in the dictionary? You think it would be?
It's in the
part
dictionary,
of common parlance.
Yeah, it's common parlance. It's one of those annoying things. Yeah, I mean, I'm involved with some people who might be putting together a Stephen Wells anthology, and if we find the column, I will send the fucker to the Oxford Dictionary, and they can stop attributing it to Viscount Arse or someone like that.
So the culmination of your career on Veep is you got an Emmy.
What?
Which you have with you.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? We went to America and it was a bit annoying because the only famous people I saw were James Corden and Ricky Gervais, and I could do that walking down the street. But, no, it was amazing. Things I learned about during the ad breaks. In Britain, everyone sits there very po-faced. In America, they went to the bar.
Yeah.
For like 3 minutes, they just legged it and started drinking. It was insane. It was the moment, I mean, probably the greatest moment of my life.
So you had no clue it was going to happen?
No, none of that. People say that, but it's true. Me and one of the writers, Roger Drew, were right at the back of the hall. So Armando's on the stage. We're still running. And I remember being so hyped up that all I could do was swear. I remember like literally shouting at Roger, shit trousers, fuck donkeys, monkey hats, just to make him laugh. We got on the stage, and the first thing that happened was that Mel Brooks, who was presenting the award, turned round and shook my hand.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, fuck. This is, Mel Brooks is like, I saw Blazing Saddles on my 14th birthday. And again, it was like the Goons with obscenity. It changed, total, what the fuck, you can do that in court. So Mel Brooks thanked me. And I didn't correct him. I'm just like, thank you, sir. I think I just said, thank you, sir. Because, the emotional thinking about it. And then, we'd been to a party the night before. My wife came over. We saw the entire cast of Game of Thrones on one side of the room and us on the other. And yeah, we drank a great deal and it was amazing.
So what are you working on now?
Got a quiz book coming out.
Right.
Quantick's Quite Difficult quiz book, available in November. Got a radio series with French and Saunders, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane Austen. It's quite weird. Lockdown's been quite good for me. And I suppose the big thing is a movie called Book of Love, starring Sam Claflin from Peaky Blinders and Veronica Echegui, which is, I've written a rom-com.
So, right, that's your invention. That's your invention, is it? That's your idea.
My idea, co-written with the director, Anna-Lena Callier-Moore. But I spend a lot of time trying to get things made.
Yeah, sure.
And I worked with a great producer called Mike Knowles. And this one got taken up and is happening and is going to be released. It's quite scary.
Right.
So it's filmed, it's been done.
It's filmed, it's been done. It's going to be delivered in 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Right. And now, are they still looking towards a kind of release in cinemas, or is it streaming?
It's going to be, I mean, you never know these days, but there's an official theatre release planned, and it will be shown on Sky as well.
Right.
So
and that's called when? That's called what?
Book of Love.
Book of Love. Very good. And when's that set?
Oh, no, it's contemporary.
Right.
It's about
completely. Yeah.
The synopsis. It's about a very uptight British author who's written quite a boring book, and it becomes massively successful in Mexico. And when he goes to Mexico, he discovers the reason is his translator, who's female, has completely rewritten it as a steamy erotic novel. So he's furious. She thinks his book is stupid. And it's a romantic comedy. You can see where it's going.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Very good.
Are there any? Have you got any records there that you've not shown us? Because I imagine you've dug out a few odd things. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. It's a short version. Favorite single of all time, Song from Under the Floorboards by Mandy.
Right.
Because it's about me. I am angry, I am ill, and I'm as ugly as sin.
I'm as ugly as sin. That's the opening line, isn't it? Extraordinary.
Just a bit of punk, Buzzcocks are my favourite band, but Love Song by The Damned.
Oh yeah.
Big Bowie fan, so Ashes to Ashes.
Oh, that's a great record.
Absolutely.
Oh, Move On, the B-side, is one of my favourite ever Bowie lines.
Very fond of Move.
It's incredible, isn't it? All about. Sometimes I get the urge to move on, so I pack a bag and move on. That's a really great line, I think.
He's never wrong. Right, one for you.
Oh yes, it's the Smash Hits Christmas flexi.
Oh, Mark's
1982.
Mark Allen's finest night's work.
Oh my lord! With Paul Weller saying, Paul Weller here. He said, "But don't let that stop you enjoying yourselves." So good. And Sarah of Bananarama saying what she wants for Christmas is 6 poodles and Al Pacino. I can remember it vividly. That's good.
Absolute. Oh, I love that flexi disc. Right, and just finally, the greatest record of all time.
Oh right, come on.
The game changer record that changed music, still sounds like nothing else on earth. I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles.
It does indeed.
Wonderful record.
It just sounds like nothing else. It doesn't sound like the blues or rock and roll or country. It's still extraordinary. And it's it's apart from Magazine, it's definitely my favourite Beatles song and my favourite everything.
No, absolutely. It lost none of its charm at all. It's absolutely extraordinary. Well, so what are you going to do for the rest of the day, David?
I'm going to take the dog to the groomer and I'm going to watch another edit of my film, Book of Love, on Sky and all cinemas soon.
Right.
Because we're doing the fiddly bits.
So you're involved in the edit?
Yeah, they're pretty nice people. There's all kinds of stages, but also because it's a very fast turnaround, it's all a bit, jump on the bus before it goes.
Right. And sorry, when's that likely to be?
I think it's November. I think everything is happening in November. So I'm basically anticipating an asteroid hitting my house in November.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a View.